Hey YouTube, this is tcagaming. In this video, we're going to do a PokeCard quiz. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be a quiz on your knowledge of the Pokemon trading card game. So, what I would like to do is, if you want to participate in the quiz, you can post your answers in the comments below, or you can just get out a sheet of paper and write on it. I'll try to give you time after I show you each question before I show you the answer. And then we'll also go into some various trivia or just information I have on whatever question it is that we're on. So let's just jump right into it. This first question is really easy, I think, for anyone who's been in the trading card game as long as I have or longer. Might be easy for many of you who watch the show or play the game. It's who was the first Pokemon in the Pokedex? So we're talking about the Pokemon that is number 1 in the Pokedex. And the answer is Bulbasaur. So many of you already knew it was Bulbasaur. Way you can check is if you have a Bulbasaur card, it should tell you that it's the number 1. Some trivia about this card here. What you're looking at is a first edition shadowless version. So right here you've got the first edition stamp. For those of you who are unaware, if you have a Bulbasaur that looks like this, has similar artwork, it needs to have that first edition stamp right there to be first edition. And then also, it is shadowless. All first edition base set cards in English are shadowless other than Machamp. But don't worry about that exception. Just focus on the fact that this card is shadowless. If it didn't have the first edition stamp, it does still have the possibility of being shadowless. Some interesting facts about this card. If you look right here, it says length. This was a complete issue misprint. Of course, its length can't be 15 pounds. It was supposed to say weight. And then if you're looking for something else other than this right side of the picture to tell if a card is shadowless, look at the bottom. You see right there it says 1990, or it says 99, and then again it says 1999, and then there's no space right there. They corrected that. But anyways, let's move on to a little bit harder question. Number 2, how many gym leader names appear on cards? So this is just Wizards of the Coast. We're referring to base set through Sky Ridge, and we're not referring to Japanese. So don't be thinking about Jasmine or Chuck or Lance or any of those. Just think about names or leader, some kind of gym leader or some kind of gym trainer name that is put in front of a name. If you said 9, you would be right. So a lot of you are probably thinking it should be 8. There was only 8 gym leaders that were put as on the names for cards in Generation 1 and 2. There are the traditional 8. You've got Blaine, Brock, Erica, Surge, Koga, Giovanni, Misty, and Sabrina, but there's also Rocket. So I guess Rocket really isn't a gym leader, so if you want to say that's the reason you don't think he's there, but you thought about him. But they are a gym trainer, and there's cards like Rocket's Moltres, Rocket's Mewtwo, and Rocket's Zapdos, and Scyther, and there's probably a few more, but that would be the 9 that bring you to that. So question number 3, what sets have a first edition Charizard? So the question is for which sets have a first edition Charizard. And again, this is, well, I guess it really wouldn't matter in this case because only Wizards of the Coast had first edition sets in English. If you're talking about Japanese, basically every set that has a Charizard would have a first edition, except for the Wizards of or the sets that would correspond to the Wizards of the Coast ones. So first we have the base set Charizard. Second, we have the Team Rocket Dark Charizard. Third, we have the Gym Challenge Blaine's Charizard. And fourth, we have the Neo Destiny Shining Charizard. So really there are 4 sets that have a first edition Charizard. And then if you want to get technical about it, you could cross out these last 3 because in Pokemon, this is the name right here. So this isn't technically Charizard, this is Shining Charizard. This is Blaine's Charizard, and this is Dark's Charizard. So if you look at Dark Charizard, it says evolves from Dark Charmeleon. It couldn't just evolve from a Charmeleon, it'd have to evolve from a Dark Charmeleon. So even though it is a Charizard, Dark, Blaine's, Shining, technically that's a part of their name. So really, there's only one true first edition Charizard, and that's the one from base set, because all of the other first edition Charizards have another part of the name that is included in it. But in my opinion, Everyone knows it's a Charizard. You see the picture right there. You have 4 different sets that carry a first edition Charizard. And just a smaller question from that: what is the only first edition Charizard that is not holo? That's right. There's only one Charizard that has the first edition stamp that is not holographic. And this is in English again. The Dark Charizard. Team Rocket, like Fossil and Jungle, had non-holographic rares correspond to their holographic rares. This wasn't done in base set. It wasn't done in Gym Challenge where you have Blaine's Charizard, and it definitely wasn't done in Destiny, especially when you have a Shining Charizard, which was triple star rare. So it's pointless to have a non-holo of that one. But as you can see, it's the same artwork as the previous Dark Charizard, but this one's holo, numbered 4 down here, and then this Charizard is not holographic. It's number 21. So moving on. This is a random question. I'll tell you how I got to this one after we go through the answers. It is, what do Bill and Gastly from Fossil have in common? And I'm sure you guys can figure out a few things, but this is probably one of the bigger aspects of the card itself. I want you to, if you can, try to not look on the internet at these 2 cards at the moment. Try to figure it out. Try to remember and see if you can think up what they have in common. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. So here they are. So now looking at it, some of you probably already picked up on it, but it's not the type of card. This is a trainer. This is a Pokemon. It's not the name. It's not the rarity. It's not the attacks. I mean, this doesn't have an attack. Yeah, they both have a first edition stamp, but that's just something that goes on the series set as it is, so that doesn't count. It's not the set. It's not the years. It's not the illustrator. What it is, the common thing is the brick wall. And the only reason I put this question in here is because I remember when I used to go to Pokemon League, they had something similar to this. It was like a quiz where you filled out different answers, and when you're done, you turned it in. You got a pre-release seizure. And one of the questions that always stuck with me was, it was like, which set Gastly has a brick or brick wall in the background? It was like base set or Fossil, or it may have been a true or false or something like that. It just stuck with me. And when I remember looking at Bill recently and I saw it had a brick wall, I'm like, hey, it has a brick wall in the background, just like Gastly. Next up, what Pokemon has only 5 artworks? And this is, again, referring to only English, but you can even include this in modern sets. This card was only printed with 5 different artworks in the English language. Those of you, this is probably going to be one of those questions you either absolutely know it or you absolutely do not. Here is the answer. It is Kadabra. The reason there's only 5 different artworks for Kadabra in the English language is because Pokemon had to stop printing cards with the name Kadabra because some dude basically become a crank tank when he saw that his name was being used on cards, and I guess so Pokemon didn't have to fight it. They just said, you know what, we won't print cards with Kadabra on it anymore. It ruined it for people who are fans of Abra and Kadabra because it's hard to get to Alakazam without a Kadabra. Pokemon routed that a few times with some basic cards that were Alakazam. But anyways, if you look at it, I think there are only 13 total variants of the card, other than cards that would have been like one-offs, like square cuts or something like that. You have first edition base set, so you have the first edition Shadowless one, which you see here. This artwork was also displayed on Shadowless, so it would have been this same card without the first edition stamp. It was also shown on, of course, Unlimited, so it wouldn't have had this first edition stamp, and you would have had the Shadow. And then again with the base set 1999-2000 dated cards, so that would have been Unlimited, Shadow, and then it had 1999-2000 at the bottom. Then there was also 3 other prints for it. It was printed in the first reprint set, which was base set 2. And then it was printed in the second reprint set, which was Legendary Collection, both as a regular and a reverse holographic. So that gives you 7 total for that artwork. And then each of these 4 both had 2 different variations. First edition Unlimited for Dark Kadabra, first edition Unlimited for Sabrina's Kadabra, and then the 2 from e-readers both had the regular, as you see there, plus the reverse holographic. So there was 13 total different Kadabra cards printed. And again, this doesn't include stuff like a match print or something that would have been a one-off, like a square cut card or huge ink blot, or, first edition on the backside or something crazy like that. Next up, which set release never had theme decks? If you collect theme decks, you're going to know this fast. If you hate theme decks because they contain the same cards in them and usually they're really cheap compared to other cards, and you probably have no idea. But the answer is Neo Revelation. Now, this set, Neo Revelation is actually a biblical reference. So you had Neo Genesis, which was the first biblical reference, and you had Neo Revelation, which was the second. You had the beginning and the end. The reason it was a reference to the end was because this is where the last of the first 251 Pokemon had their release. So once Neo Revelation come out, Generation 2 had every Pokemon released somewhere in the packs or some kind of showing. And there was Neo Destiny after that, but again, Revelation is just referring to the end of the 251 Pokemon making their debut. This set also introduced Shining Pokemon. You had Shining Gyarados and you had Shining Magikarp. Both of these were unlike all of the other Shinings in that they didn't have a texture. They were just holographic like the other holographics in the set. They were still hard to pull, but they weren't textured like the ones from Neo Destiny and also Shining Legends. Now, if you look at the title, it says which set released never had theme decks. This is again referring only to Wizards of the Coast because I believe it was Legendary Treasures that also did not have theme decks, which is more of a recent set. But really, I mean, it's like 3-4 years old at least. In fact, I think it may have been 2013. I can't remember what year that set came out. So, what is the only currently playable trainer from base set? And none of them say item or supporter because back then you just had trainer cards. So I mean, I'm not sure if it actually is playable, but the text of the card itself is essentially identical to a modern set release that is currently playable. And the answer is Switch. Some of you may have been thinking, well, what about Potion? I mean, I know there's potions. Well, Potion, the modern card for it heals 30 damage. I guess what's it called, errata or something like that, where the original potion heals 20 damage. And you have cards like Energy Retrieval, where the original Energy Retrieval, you had to trade a card to get 2 energies back out. I think the Energy Retrieval now just you get 2 energies out of your discard pile. With Switch, it basically says the exact same thing. The wording is switched around. This says switch one of your own bench Pokemon with one of your active. I think the new one that's playable says switch your active Pokemon with one of your own bench, which is the exact same thing. Next up, what were the 4 official pre-release cards under Wizards of the Coast? And the key here is official, because there's no reason arguing that there are 5 for some of you. And here are the 4. You've got Clefable, Aerodactyl, Dark Gyarados, and Misty Seadra. You have the Jungle, Fossil, Team Rocket, and Gym Heroes release. Unlike newer sets, there's not a pre-release card for every single set. Back then, they just printed however they wanted. I mean, that's the way I see it. The Clefable is rumored to have 4 different variations with different colors and dyes. Nobody's produced photos for that, so you take it with a grain of salt. Then you've got Aerodactyl. It does have at least, it's got the 2 variations in English with a brown and the gold stamp, and I'm referring to the color of the stamp. This is the brown one. And then there's also a hollow different pattern for each of those. Like the brown, you have the starry foil, which is like the Clefable here, and what you see on this Aerodactyl. And then there's the gold pre-release, which has more of the Cosmos or Galaxy foil, kind of like the Dark Gyarados and Misty Seadra. As far as I know, there's no variations for Dark Gyarados or pre-release Seadra. Some of you were saying, well, what about Raichu? Didn't it have a pre-release? And so this is not my image, or I didn't want to take someone else's image, so I just had a regular Raichu, and I overlaid pre-release in a completely different color so someone doesn't try to take this photo and then sell it and try to make $20,000. I don't think any of these have actually publicly surfaced for sale. There have been some private sales of these cards and very reputable people within the community who have actually held them. I've never personally held one or seen one in person, so I can't vouch for that. I do have information from various places, but again, that's still hearsay, and it's very, very, very unlikely that this card could ever be authenticated no matter who had it, unless there was some kind of official document that was released talking about this card, which again is very, very, very unlikely. So, to round out our quiz, who was the only Pokemon under Wizards of the Coast lacking the first edition stamp, and that meaning there is no card that was ever printed with the first edition stamp with their artwork on it. And this is in English. So the answer is Mew. Mew was released in Pokemon Leagues. It had a non-holo version and a holographic version. This one, of course, is the holo version. That's what these little bubbles are popping out. This one was nicknamed Rainbow Mew because you see all these different colors in the background. It just picked up the name Rainbow. A few years later, it was actually over 2 years later, I think in June of 2002, Lily Pad Mew, that was the number 47, this is the number 9, was released through the Black Star promos. I'm not sure why it was called Lily Pad Mew because it's squatting on a rock. It's not squatting on a lily pad, it's squatting on a rock. And then the next Mew release was the wildly popular Ancient Mew. Everyone loved that card. It came out in the theaters. Even now, some people think it's the rarest card there is, but it was printed. It's everywhere. The only Mew that ever come out of a pack was Mew from Expedition, and this was the second set printed without the first edition stamp. So there was never a Mew put into any of the original Generation 1 packs or the Neo packs, which were the only packs that come out in English with the first edition stamp. There was never a Mew stuck in there. This was actually the only set that Mew was printed in that come from a booster pack, and it had 4 different variations. You had the holographic number 19 and the reverse holographic number 19, which is right here. And then I can't remember the rare counterpart for it. The number, I believe it may have been 55 or 54, but again, it had the rare non-holo, and then there was the reverse holographic. So that was the 4 different variations of the one artwork of Mew that come out of Wizards of the Coast. And then lastly, you've got the Mew, which was previously released already as a Southern Islands promo. This was a binder that featured 18 different Pokemon. They come with a binder, a pack, in Japanese. I think it was postcards. There may have been postcards in English too. I can't remember. And then there was 3 booster packs also in that box. And those boxes now they're worth like $300-400 sealed. But the Mew itself, it was the number 1 card in there. It was reverse holographic. But I don't consider that a set because it was more of it was the exact same contents in every single box. It was 18 cards, and you got every card in the set. But again, Mew never got a first edition stamp. I believe it was slighted. All of the other 250 Pokemon they did, and then of course there was definitely no first edition stamp ever since in Generation 3 and on. But anyways, I appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you would, leave a comment below whether or not you like seeing these kinds of quizzes, and I can make more. This only took a few hours to do, and I can put some cool questions or trivia in there. If you have no opinion about it, tell me what your favorite Pokemon is. I'd love to know what your favorite Pokemon is.